We're human beings. We're not brown, white, yellow, black. I mean, those are colors. Those are crayons. It's a piece of chalk. We're human beings, and I feel that we need to look at us as human beings and understand that we all have different experiences. I mean, if we learn a little bit about everybody's culture, maybe we'll be a little bit more understanding of one another.
For the Marin Council of Chambers, I'm Stephanie Plant, and this is We Are One Marin. But that was Frank Gomez, owner of Wink Optics in San Anselmo. When Kalina and I sat down with him, he went to the heart of the We Are One Marin campaign's mission. How do we promote social equity in business and in community right here in this county? From his childhood in one of Sacramento's poor neighborhoods to his early career in the emerging rave culture, Frank has made the most of his opportunities. Even after he started selling sunglasses, it wasn't enough to be the rep. He found a way to own the shop and be the optician instead. As he grew his number of locations and took on a partner, he remained true to where he started by advertising as a minority-owned business in a predominantly white area. If you're a regular listener of the podcast, this episode may sound a little different, and by different I mean it's a little bit longer and the subject matter is more sensitive too. You will hear our conversations about domestic violence and racial equity, and you'll hear some of Frank's personal opinions. Stay tuned for our deepest dive yet, as we really talk about how Marin works. We have the pleasure this morning of meeting Frank Gomez from Wink Optics in Mill Valley and San Anselmo. Frank, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
So let's hear a little bit about your business. From cosmetology to optician.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that transition?
That was a big change. But working with facial anatomies and hair color, they're related because it's still style and fashion. And you're looking at facial anatomies and hair color and haircuts. And then you're pairing this fashion piece with medical. So once you put a prescription lens into a frame, sunglass or clear, it's now a class 3 medical device, regulated by the FDA.
Okay, can you explain what I don't even know that. I don't class 3 medical device. I don't think I've ever heard that term.
Yes, so it's like topicals. That would be like a class 3. So optometrists can write a prescription for topicals. Class 1 would be your opiates or stuff like that. So contact lenses are a class 3 medical device as well, so regulated by the FDA.
Because you need a prescription to obtain it.
Mm-hmm. Huh. Yes.
Okay.
So it's interesting, and that's why you don't pay tax on your prescription eyewear.
Oh. Cool. Another handy consumer tip right here.
That you wouldn't think about, right?
So this is going to sound super basic, but an optician is different from an optometrist is different from an ophthalmologist. Can you,
Yes.
because I had to go look it up.
Yes. We both did.
Yes, I bet. Most people go, you're an obstetrician.
Oh, no.
I don't know.
Definitely not that.
I know what that is.
I know. I work from the neck up.
Yeah.
They work from the waist down. And I want to keep it right there.
Oh, my God. And you're going to be doing stand-up this weekend where?
Yeah, I know. Well, too bad Terrapin closed. I'd be over there.
Right.
So the difference between an ophthalmologist is they're a medical doctor.
Okay.
And they do surgeries, etc.
Eye surgery.
Yes.
Okay.
And then optometrists now are trying to get a little broader scope. They can manage glaucoma. They can do topicals, prescribe topicals, and it depends on the state. And then the difference from an optometrist to an optician is we choose the correct frame for the facial anatomy and then marry the prescription that the doctor prescribes into the correct frame.
And sometimes the frame and the prescription won't go together.
No.
And then you provide the service of eye exam from the optometrist in your stores, correct?
Yes. In Mill Valley, we've done that for quite a while. And then we just added San Anselmo just 2 months ago.
Oh.
So we have Dr. Tim Tandro, who was an optometrist in San Francisco for 40 years. And then we just have Dr. Nina Margulis from Mill Valley. Unfortunately, during COVID, her practice closed. And her loss, but our gain. And now her gain is she's in both locations. And she's very, very happy. We love to have her. So she's great.
And full disclosure, I have actually had my eyes examined by her, and I have been purchasing glasses from the Mill Valley store for a long time. You guys are well enmeshed in the community there. I was involved in the local swim team and got to know your partner, Quinn, that way. I do think it's fair to say that the Chambers of Commerce nominated businesses to be featured in the ads in the IJ, and then we solicited for volunteers to be in the podcast, just lest anyone think that we're in a Stephanie's Friends podcast.
I know, right?
Frank is giving me new goals for glasses right now. If all of
Electric green aviator styles.
if all of our listeners could just see.
Yes, and if you put these under a black light, they glow.
Come on.
Glow in
yes.
the dark.
If the black light is on, like when you'd go to a club, these things, because my kids have a night light that is like a black light. It has all these things. And then when I went in there one day, they call me Oto-san, which is father in Japanese. They're like, your glasses are glowing. And I used to be a club promoter, so throwing raves and everything too, which isn't on that list.
Oh,
not
that's
on
not
your
in your
resume.
bio.
That's
Seriously?
weird. It's not on your LinkedIn.
I left that on LinkedIn, but I used to promote nightclubs for almost 20 years.
Wow.
It was pretty fun. I always explain to my wife, you have nothing to worry about. I'll never have a midlife crisis. So I don't need the Porsche or anything like that. I'll just stay with my Prius and my Tesla. I'm good to
I
go.
did that before.
Yes.
So you mentioned your kids. You have two?
I have actually 3. So I have a 23-year-old who's about to graduate from San Diego State.
Wow, congratulations,
Thank
Dad.
you very much. And then I have 9 and 10-year-old daughters.
And your own background, if we may, a little bit.
So grew up in Sacramento, born in Sacramento in 1966.
Oh, wow. I wasn't going to ask you that, but okay.
Yes. So I am your elder, so please show me a little respect. I'd appreciate it during this podcast. Go be kind.
You don't have me by much. Kalina, on the other hand.
I'm just going to stay quiet.
She's a baby.
She's a baby.
You have my respect.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, the funniest story about Kalina is I had no idea. So I get the call about the podcast, and she goes, "Oh, you fixed my glasses for me." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? I have never met you before." And then she told me that Dave brought this Chanel to me a few weeks ago, and he goes, "A friend of mine broke this frame. What can you do?" And I said, "Repair it." And then
They're on my face right now.
they're Chanel. They look fabulous.
Did you recognize the glasses when you came in today?
Yes, but she had mentioned that I had repaired them, but then I knew right away.
Yeah.
It was her. So I hadn't met her, but I knew who she was from the frames that were on her face.
That is great.
In most rooms, I have the best glasses, except for in this room. You two are kicking my Chanels.
Well, mine are lavender.
Yeah, she got lavender spectacles.
We're going to have to take
neon.
We will get a picture.
Black. Yeah, seriously.
We will get a glass.
And we're wearing the same brand. This is green as well.
We
So-
didn't even know. We didn't plan it.
No.
Yeah.
So clearly the glasses business seems to be where you've settled.
Well, it was interesting. So I went into the opticianry, and I was making probably millions of dollars for these doctors over the years. And then I happened to go on Match.com. And that's how I met my wife at the time. And she, later on, we started dating, and she said, because I was working in these little optical practices, and she said, "You should really get your own place. You have this drive, and, why are you working for people?" And after that, I ended up getting a job in sales. Somebody saw potential in me. And it was interesting. For so many years, I was always saying, "Oh, somebody gave me a break." And a couple CEOs and a couple of my mentors said, "No one gave you a break." And I was taken back. I'm like, no, this dude gave me a break. And they're like, "No, if he didn't see potential in you, he would have never gave you the job." So you need to give yourself a little pat on the back, because sometimes I always give everybody else the thanks, and sometimes you have to thank yourself, and we forget about that. Especially I feel like people of color, we're always thankful for just getting a break, and sometimes we forget to kind of thank ourselves.
My grandfather used to say, "It's better to be lucky than good," which I mean, that expression is not unique to him.
Right.
But you have to be in the right place at the right time, working hard for someone to notice you, meaning, which is what I think you're saying. And also you have to recognize the good fortune that is in front of you.
Oh, absolutely. And so I took the job with Maui Jim, and I don't have a 4-year degree. I don't have a high school diploma. And so I was like smoking these people in sales. And, on sales teams of 100 people, There were only 2 or 3 people of color on the sales teams. But it's great because I had opportunity, I ran with it, and I never looked back. And then, so I had built relationships as a sales rep with my accounts. So San Anselmo was one of my accounts for Maui Jim.
Mm.
So I had just started with Maui Jim in 2007, and I was in Santa Rosa, and all of a sudden, one of my accounts goes, "Oh, you know Jeff's selling." I said, "No, I had no idea." So I hopped in my truck, and I drove as fast as I could from Santa Rosa to San Anselmo. And I said, "Jeff, you didn't tell me you sold." He goes, "Yeah, somebody put money down." And I said, "Well, why didn't you think of me?" He goes, "Well, you just took the job with Maui Jim." So I took all the money I'd saved from promoting clubs and I bought it.
Somebody else made a deposit, but you
And
were
then
able
and then
to.
it failed. It fell through. So he called me and says, "If you're still interested." And so that's how I was able to acquire San Anselmo. And then it gets even more interesting and funny is then Quinn happens to be a sales rep, my business partner in Mill Valley, for these little readers called Visualites. And so she came in there one day and I was like, "Oh, well, here's the places you should go." And literally, I'd only been in sales for a year. So I'm here, you should go here, here, and here. And we talked a little bit longer. And then as I'm leaving, she goes, "I have a feeling we're going to, work together sometime or do something." And if you know Quinn, she kind of knows things ahead of time.
Yes.
So I called my girlfriend, who is now my wife, and I said, "Hey, I met this crazy woman." And, she says, we're going to be in business together. And
She's determined.
very determined. And if Quinn is the implementer and executor, she's the queen.
Yes.
That woman gets stuff done better than anyone I know. And so she comes to me 6 months later and she goes, "Hey, they're ready to sell in Mill Valley." And I had met with Michael Quinn before. Michael Quinn, Irish Quinn.
Got it.
Quinn, not Quynh like Quinn. And I said, "Well, hey, I'll help you open it, but I don't have any money. I just put my life savings." And she goes, "Well, I won't do it without you." And from my old rave days, I had this credit card with a pretty great credit limit. And I took the cash out at 7% interest.
Oh, wow.
And took a risk. And that's how we acquired Mill Valley.
Wow.
So pretty cool.
And speaking of not giving you a break, it wasn't a break. She said, "I won't do it without you."
Yes.
That is a compliment for sure.
Oh, I love Quinn. And through all that 2008 and 9 and 10, if it wasn't for Quinn, I would not have San Anselmo still. And the owner of the building, Christine Howie, unfortunately passed away. She would let us pay sometimes 2 months late, 3 months late of rent. So we were very fortunate to have people that also helped us through a very tough time.
Well, I think, in life, we're in relationships, and in business, we are too. And that landlord-tenant relationship, if there can be some give and take, it certainly helps small businesses survive.
Oh, especially in 2008 and definitely now in 2020, 21, and 22.
Yeah. Well, and you said you were literally going into people's homes to bring them glasses,
Yes.
repairs.
We had to furlough everyone. And I just sat in San Anselmo 5 days a week, sometimes 6, picking up the phone, returning messages, emails, whatever we could do. And then we decided that we weren't going to charge for repairs or adjustments where everybody else does. Nose pads, cloths, sprays, cases, we just gave them complimentary. To give back to the community that really has supported us for years. It was a way to give back to anyone. That was what we did. As long as it didn't cost a lot of money to do the repair and I could do it there, we did it complimentary. And we still do to this day.
That's a great service. And speaking of service to community, I think as we spoke, as we were getting started here today, it seems like community is really important to you.
All it is about community. And I feel that we have not really focused on community. I feel that we've kind of put it on the back burner because life is pretty stressful, as we all know, and especially during COVID, it's been pretty tough. But when COVID hit, we made it our mission, Jenny, my manager, and I, to promote every other business in San Anselmo on all our social pages over ours. So every single day, almost every day, I would go and promote a business, because my feeling was that if they survived, my business would survive. And so that's why I feel community is very important. And because of that, I've joined our DEI committee in San Anselmo and the Economic Development Committee as well, hopefully to bring more people of color to bring their businesses to San Anselmo. And how do we facilitate that? And not just to San Anselmo, to the whole county of Marin, let's be honest.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Speaking of just this subject about minority-owned businesses, I am looking at an ad for your business. So let's see. Congratulations. You were selected in the Marin IJ Readers Poll. Wink Optics, Best Eyewear Store.
Yes, we were very fortunate. We won in 2021 and 2022, which we did that during the pandemic. And you have to put this into perspective. One store, as you know, in Mill Valley is only 200 square feet.
Mm-hmm. It's small.
It's half a bowling alley.
There are a lot of glasses. There are a lot of glasses in there, but half of a bowling lane.
Yeah, think about that.
Yeah.
And then San Anselmo, our retail area is only 400 square feet. Mm-hmm. And so we do all that in a very small footprint. But what we can do is we can control service, quality, and then the experience that you get by having a smaller footprint. And for the county of Marin to vote us over all the bigger optical places, we're so fortunate. And to add to that, Marin Magazine in 2021 as well.
Good
So
for
we're
you.
very, very...
And I notice in the ad, you've got 100% minority owned right here in your ad. I'd like to talk about putting it out there. Some businesses, and by no means have we done a representative sample yet, but some proprietors, I think, are concerned about whether or not to advertise that they are minority owned. How does it work for you?
It's a great question. We felt the same way. But once we were highlighted in the We Are One, Quinn and I spoke, and my wife, who's Japanese from Japan, came here at 18 to go to college. Mm-hmm. So we had a conversation, and we're just going to own it. And if people got offended by it, that's not my concern. Mm-hmm. I'm only in charge of my reaction. I can't control other people's actions. So that's on them. But I'm actually in control of how I react to everything. And so we're going to promote it. And we choose to find people that are qualified of color as well. So my manager is Jenny Gramajo. Her family came here from Guatemala. We have Cecile Alano. Her parents came from the Philippines. We have Alex Guzman, who is from Mexico, her family. And we have LGBTQ community also working in our location. So, but even my cousins who are black and of Latin descent as well walk, and they're like, dude, I can't believe there's no people of color except for the restaurants. I said, I know. Even on our street, downtown San Anselmo, it's really only Caesar's Bicycle Shop and us that are really minority owned. The African-American woman that had the studio there, the art studio, moved to Mill Valley on the corner, Desta Gallery. And she's doing really well. I was sorry to see her go, but she's doing extremely well. So I'm very proud of her.
That's great to hear. So let's get back to you a little bit, if we could. I know you don't want to talk about yourself. I noticed we got Sacramento.
Right.
And I did hear that you've made a lot of success out of a little bit of education.
Yes. I usually don't like to talk myself, so that's why I kind of segued away.
I caught
Each
that.
time you guys got to come back to worry. But grew up in Sacramento. That's going to get a little deep. My father was an alcoholic. Was physically abusive of my mother. But they got married. She was 16. He was 21. He quit high school, went to go fight in World War II for our country. And they met at dance because he used to love to dance. And my older brother was born when my mother was 17. Wow. Yes. So children having, children. And then I had another older sister that was 3 years after that. and then another sister, and then there was an 8-year gap. And from my understanding, my younger brother and I were the kids to save the marriage. And we're only 17 months apart. As usually, so people always joke like Irish twins. It's Mexican twins. I always say so. Don't give the Irish all the, And then once he started putting his hands on the younger ones, my sister's 8 years older and us, she left. She wouldn't allow it. When it was her,
Your mom left.
yes, my mother, yeah. When he was doing things to her, that was okay with her. But when he started putting his hands on us, she bounced so fast. It was wild. So, and then after that, grew up in neighborhoods that most people in Marin probably wouldn't walk through at night. Oak Park, that's where all my black family's from. And then we grew up in Franklin Boulevard, was mostly a lot of Mexicans over there. Campbell Soup used to be there, and just all the lowriders and cruising and stuff. And then Southside Park, and then I got into junior high, and then we got out into a little better neighborhood because my mother would walk people to school. But there were times like when we grew up in Franklin Boulevard, there was something called the 39-cent hamburger stand, and it's all we could afford. It was 39 cents for each item, and as later on in life, she would say that she would sit there as we were eating and she would just salivate because she would just drink water.
But she wouldn't eat.
Yeah, she couldn't. I mean,
There were 6 kids?
At that time, there was just my younger brother and I because the other ones were older. I talked to my brother about a lot of this stuff. I forgot about a lot of these things.
You were young.
Well, and I put them into I put them into a box. And my younger brother remembers everything. We lived in I think we counted during Christmas, and my wife was just like, whoa, it was 25 or 24 homes by the age of 13. We were constantly always moving because that's whatever we could afford. So, and then my mother found a place, and then she was working a few jobs, walking kids to school, just whatever she could find to work, because here you had somebody that was 16, had no education. What kind of job could she get in the 70s and 80s? I mean, she didn't know, and she was raising 2 young boys. Obviously, we're not on camera, but, you can't always judge a book by its cover. Like some people always have privilege. I guess I have the privilege of not really looking too Mexican. I mean, my skin color, of course, but no one really ever even goes, oh, you're Mexican. But sometimes they go, oh, you got a great tan. So when people talk about marginalized or disenfranchised, you can still have those experiences, but you don't look like you went through it. So this is not just for Mexicans or African Americans. It happens to all of us. And like I mentioned to you earlier, we're human beings. We're not brown, white, yellow, black. I mean, those are colors. Those are crayons. It's a piece of chalk. We're human beings. And I feel that we need to look at us as human beings and understand that we all have different experiences. I mean, if we learn a little bit about everybody's culture, maybe we'll be a little bit more understanding of one another. Instead of sitting there going, well, you're white, you're Asian, you're brown, you're Mexican, So that's how I feel we could probably get away from this divisiveness is stop throwing the color around all the time. And I know other people feel differently about it because I've spoke to them. The people when they're speaking say, well, I want it labeled that way. I feel that we need to get away from that a little bit. I think we just talk about different cultures, the experiences, and own what have happened, acknowledge it, teach it. And if we taught everyone that, we'd probably be a little bit more accepting of one another.
And you're teaching that to your children.
Absolutely. It was interesting a couple of years ago because we embrace their Japanese culture. So they speak Japanese, they read, write Japanese. They go to Japanese school every Saturday. So when all these kids are playing sports, my kids are doing Japanese school. And then in the summertime, when the kids are off school, they go to Japan and go to Japanese school there.
Oh, wow. So
a couple of years ago, somebody came to school and goes, oh, well, you were our enemy. And my kids are like, enemy? World War II. So some parent must have just said that. So instead of being the helicopter parent that we see a lot in Marin, I took a different approach. I kept my mouth quiet. I didn't go to the principal. But when it was Notori's turn to be Star of the Week, I took her kimono, and I took the pictures of Girl Day, which they have in Japan every year on March 3rd. And I went and approached it differently. I said, well, when all of you are going to school on Saturday or off school on Saturdays, she's learning Japanese. And I said, hey, what's your favorite fruit? Almost all of them said what? Japanese. So I turned lemons into lemonade. And you can do that without making that divisiveness. Why go to the school and make a big deal out of it? A lot of people do that. When there's other ways to make people feel welcome and appreciated and understood.
I agree. I had a very similar experience growing up. Being biracial and growing up in Marin, it was difficult in a school setting. And I have an advantage of being Native Hawaiian. That is, I think, an ethnicity that people look at as exotic. And so it doesn't have some of the negative connotations and stereotypes that a lot of other people have to battle. And even yet, still, like, I hid going to hula. I danced hula in Richmond when I was in elementary school. And it reminded me of your story. We had a show and tell. I remember being so nervous and just, nervous for being different. People have so many questions about you in a different way that if you go up and share about, your dog or something like that, to reveal something that makes you different and sets you apart, coming from your parents when they're really supportive of it. It's empowering, but there is, as a child, a vulnerability. And I think kids, no matter what is setting them apart and making them different, it's hard to embrace that. And especially when it's a racial minority here and everything is so white.
And then people accepted it, right? And they were actually
now
questions.
People always just assume I'm a hula dancer and I haven't danced hula.
Right.
And like,
and that's what happened in Notori. Yeah. After the class, they all went up to him and were like, "Oh my gosh, it was so cool!" And can we touch the kimono? Mm-hmm. So it's like there's always different ways to approach things, and to see that you look. I mean, I wish people could see we had a camera because you could see the look on your face. It's great because it's stuck with you for how many years now?
20 something.
There you go.
Yeah.
See, so it was a defining moment for you.
Definitely. And that celebration. And I think even when we were talking about this podcast, that came up a lot of like, what is the actual act of advocacy here for minority-owned businesses? And it was like, is it the subject of our podcast? Is it the center of our questions? No, it's just extending an arm. That act in and of itself, or going and embracing your daughter in that way instead of making a combative moment, those are the kind of things that just an extension of an arm, right, is what we need.
Well, I'll say it this way after what you just said. I had no idea what to expect on this podcast. Mm-hmm. So I'm doing the hula dance right now. Because I was very nervous. Because it is true, though, because I don't know how Marin is going to accept this. Mm-hmm. You just don't know. I mean, those are the tough conversations that we don't talk about over here in Marin. We need to get more people thinking that way, feeling that passionate about it. That's the difference. How do we do that?
Absolutely. I was just going to ask you.
You tell us.
Well, this podcast is a start. Mm-hmm. Getting more people of color, or even people that are marginalized and disenfranchised or don't have as much, that make it, to your point, mm-hmm. making a difference. And mm-hmm. how do we motivate them to make the difference? Because if you look at a lot of people of color that kind of get to that area of financial freedom, they kind of forget where they came from. Mm-hmm. So back to what we were talking about before we started this, no one talks about the socioeconomic or the class component. So the point I bring up quite a bit in town is you're cool with me if I'm living next door to you or my cousins who are black, as long as we fit into what you feel mm-hmm. is acceptable, let's say, from a socioeconomic or a class, the way we look, dress, mm-hmm. speak to one another.
I think awareness is right up there with perspective.
I think it's even better than perspective because they go hand in hand. Without perspective, you don't have awareness. Perspective brings awareness because all of a sudden now you're going, both your heads are shaking. What is that making you think about or how you feel when we talk about these certain issues? And that's what we need to do. You reach out to your friends. Mm-hmm. You reach out to your friends. I'm reaching out to as many people as I can.
I think that goes back to what we can do. We talked about bringing more employees of color into Marin, more business owners of color, more customers, frankly, yes. More families. But what you've done in the town of San Anselmo to promote the other businesses on your street, if that guy 3 doors down or that woman 3 doors down if her business succeeds, then all the boats on the ocean rise when the tide rises. You're doing something good for yourself, I guess, on one level, but ultimately I think it's about helping each other.
That's interesting because I was talking about it and I was mentioning it, like, if we all did that, it wouldn't be just San Anselmo. It'd be Fairfax, San Rafael, it'd be all of Marin. And so we have to get the businesses together, and what you're doing, this is amazing. And so, I'm doing the bowing to you. We're not worthy.
Well, we can't do it alone. We can't do it alone, and we're so grateful to our friends and colleagues at the Marin Community Foundation and at the Marin IJ, and all of our chambers of commerce, because that's another way that we can lift businesses up. The local chambers, their CEOs and staff, they work really hard to promote and support local businesses.
Oh, when I was approached, I was like so excited because what you're doing is giving everybody a louder voice and more people to reach. This is what makes a difference.
Thank you.
Thank you. We value your time.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
So let's get louder in community together.
I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
The
Thank
pleasure
you.
is mine. Thank you to both of you very much.
If you want to join the conversation or make suggestions, reach us at weareonemarin@gmail.com. For Wink Optics San Anselmo, visit sunglasscity.com. To find the Mill Valley store, go to winkoptics.com. The Marin Community Foundation generously sponsors this podcast. Our theme music is performed by a student at Enriching Lives Through Music. Elm is in San Rafael's Canal neighborhood. Finally, a reminder to support diverse local businesses and shop Marin.